Hey there guys, and welcome back to this series, turning your 4-bar loop into a finished song. This is episode 3, and if you haven't watched 1 and 2, I'd strongly suggest to do so. I'm walking you through my production process and how I go about producing a song and taking that 4-bar initial riff and idea and fleshing that out into a finished song. So if you haven't, I'd encourage you to do that. Episode 1, I walk you through the whole stage of inspiration and how I started in writing the song, and then 2, we walk through some drum programming and some great stuff through the arrangement. So in this video, we're going to focus on my vocal arrangements and how I go about treating the vocals and doing some vocal chop stuff and really diving into the whole central piece of this song, which is the vocals. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so previously I've been telling you about my routing and how I set up my vocal routing. Now, remember, this is more of a personal approach, and the great thing about using Ableton Live is that there are so many different ways to arrive at the similar destination. So you might find a particular workflow or a system of working in this program that really suits your workflow and it really suits your way of getting that inspiration, creativity out there. And I would encourage you to stay with that. I mean, the most important thing about the whole recording and creative process, especially when working on producing music for others, is that you just allow yourself to have a system in place that allows you to be as creative as you can possibly be without hindering and tripping up on some technical hangups, right? So what I share with you in this series are things that have just been great for me, really helpful for me. So I would encourage you to either use them in your workflow or just say, hey man, that seems cool, but I really like the way I'm using or the way I route my things. So that's perfectly fine too. So let me dive in with talking about the vocals. So previously in the other episodes of the series, I've shown you how I keep my vocals ungrouped, but yet I have them routed to an audio track. So what we're looking at is I have the verse lead, right? These are lead vocals, meaning the predominant lead vocal that's going on at that time of the arrangement. So here's the verse, here's a second verse, and then I also have a pre-chorus lead here, and I might even have a chorus lead as well. So what I do is I route all of these lead vocals, the first lead, the pre-lead, and maybe the bridge lead vocal, and I would route them to a lead vocal bus, basically a channel that will contain all of those vocals through that one channel. Now, here's the reason why I'm not grouping them, for a couple of reasons. Now, once again, I'm inviting you to explore whatever workflow is going to work for you, but this is the reason why I work this way. So these vocals are going to be routed to this vocal bus. And the reason why I do that instead of grouping them is so that I can constantly just keep an eye on levels being sent to that vocal bus. And so for instance, if I wanted to just have the pre-lead a little bit, it's just so that I'm not dealing with and similar to what I said about the drums, I just don't want to extract or open and close all the time when having to deal with vocals. And since vocals are predominantly the most edited and tweaked element of my mixes, whether they're in Ableton or Pro Tools, whatever, I just want to be able to see the overall layout. And as you see, the more vocals you have, as you can see here, we've got all these background vocals and things like that. I want to be able to just monitor them without always having to open and close the group. So I don't group them for that reason. But now let's talk about how to actually create a vocal bus like this. So I simply created an audio track. So you can do that with Apple T or Command T, create an audio track here. And then simply choose to select the input monitoring. And what that's going to do is when audio goes to, or when audio is routed to that track, you can always hear that. You're always actively monitoring the audio being routed through that. You see, when you set it to auto, you're only going to hear the audio going to that track when you record enable it. So you don't want that to happen. So we want it on input monitoring. And then you just go ahead and select the tracks that you want to be routed to that track through the output to that specific bus. So for instance, let me just delete this and I'll show you what I mean. So the verse lead, the pre-lead, and the bridge lead. We're going to go to the output here and choose lead vocal bus because I want them all to go to my lead vocal bus. And on this vocal bus is where I hold all the processing. This is really helpful too, so that you're not using up all the resources, copying all the plugins you're using on one vocal and then placing them on multiple vocal tracks. Now we've got about maybe, I don't know, eight or nine vocals here, or even more. Yeah, not including my vocals that I have tucked away over here as well. And I do have this group, and I'll share with you why I have this grouped and not ran through the other system. So we've got a lot of vocals here, not too much, but a couple, more than 3. And so it would start to be a strain on your CPU if you're just copying all of those plugins and just dragging and dropping them onto the other one. So this is a great way to just ease up on the resources by just having all the plugins live in one place. So all the vocals are being routed here, and here's what we call a vocal chain. Okay, and so this means that those 3 vocals, the verse, the pre, and the bridge, are all going to be treated equally. With the effects processing, the EQing, the compression, all that's going to be applied equally to those. And then I have a separate bus here for my background vocals, because the background vocals are going to be treated a little bit differently than the lead. I want the lead to be a little bit more predominant, more more in front of the mix, and probably a little bit drier in effects, maybe like some reverbs and things like that, than the backgrounds. And plus the backgrounds are going to be layered and they're going to be panned and things like that. So we've got a mono vocal performance, and the backgrounds tend to be a little bit wider in stereo depth. So I want a separate bus for that. And sometimes I'll create another bus for harmonies. If I've got like some background harmonies, I'll create another one like that. So typically I'll get a lead, background bus, and some harmony buses, and then some extra cool things I might do. It depends on the song itself. So let me walk you a little bit through the vocal chain. Let's take it from verse 2, and we'll play it. Your hands are all over me, lips against my skin. So here you have the verse vocal coming in verse lead. Now I'll have just some auto-tune here for any intonation down the road, and then I have this filter, but that's more for like an actual effect processing that happens in later on in the song, and that's here at the bridge. So let's just take a listen to that. Still I keep running back. So there's just that one moment where I'm applying some automation to turn on the filter there, and I do that. The reason why I did that on the verse vocal track itself was because I just wanted the performance, the filter performance, to be controlled through the compression, the EQ, and everything like that. So that's why I did that. But so the vocal here is being routed to the lead bus, and then the lead bus has this vocal chain. So I'm just going to explain this a little bit, but I've also created a vocal chain. Now I'm using a lot of third-party plugins. These are plugins that don't come stock with Ableton Live. These are plugins that my ears have just gotten used to working with. Not that you cannot achieve them, achieve the same results using stock plugins. These are just certain attributes that I like about these plugins. So what I've done is I've created a vocal chain using all Ableton stock plugins that allow you to kind of get the same performance and the same results. So that's absolutely yours for free. Just click the link in the description box to download that. It's a vocal chain that I've made that you can go ahead and use in any of your sessions. So here I start off with the gate, so I can eliminate any background noise. Maybe somebody breakdance fighting in the background. I just don't want to capture that, so I'll use a gate to just focus in on the vocal performance and just cancel out any other vocals and any other noise. And then we've got this virtual mix plugin by Slate Digital, and I love this plugin. And what this is, the VCC channel, is it's emulating a console, Neve, SSL, Trident board. It's really creating like this algorithm to emulate that you're running this track through the specific channel on a console. So this really only works when you're applying it all across the board to all the tracks in your session. So I'll put this on my drums, I'll put this on every track in my session has a VCC channel plugin, so that I can emulate as if I'm routing each track through a board. And so the way this works is you have the VCC channel to go on that specific track, say the vocals. Still I keep running. You choose the console you want to emulate, the British N right here. It's basically the Neve console. So I've been so used to working on a Neve board, and that's just been the blessing of working with someone like Jimmy Douglas, who's like a Neve king. So I love the sound of this board, and I actually love the sound of the emulation too. It does a really great job. And I could just give it a little drive. And then what you do is, once you've gotten all your channels loaded with this plugin, on the master bus, as you can see here, I'll go to the master bus really quickly. I have the virtual mix bus plugin But instead of the VC channel, sorry about that, I'm using the VCC mix bus. So this will be the final mix bus plugin. And so if this sounds crazy and you're not sure where I'm at, I don't want to send you down a rabbit hole, just think of it as like this. Every single channel in my session will have a emulated console plugin, and then all that's being topped off with the emulated console master mix bus, and that's what I have here. And it really makes a big difference. It does add warmth to the overall mix, so it's something to definitely look out for. Now once again, do you need it? No, it's just that extra touch that I like adding to my mixes. And so next I have a 1176 plugin, and then we go ahead and use an EQ and a de-esser to control any the high sibilance. And then I have another plugin, a compression, just to give an overall dynamic control. And then I'm running it through some tape emulation, and that is just giving some overall saturation just to get some grit into the vocal. And that's my vocal chain here, and it's gonna look different every single time I'm working on a project. This is just, it's kind of like my kind of go-to stuff, but it changes every time. I rarely would use the tape stuff on the vocal, but for this one I just wanted to add that grit. So these are some settings and some things that I have. Let me just go and play the vocal with it.
Still I keep running back if I give it away.
So let's go ahead and take it from verse 2.
All over me.
And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just bypass each one, and you start to see the difference.
Swore I was turning you out. Now you're right back
And
in.
take that out.
Like the sickest
So that's the
man.
vocal, just dry. Well, obviously with the reverb and delay, but that's without the inserts going on in the actual lead bus. So that's just a little bit of what's going on the lead vocal bus. So the processing for my lead vocals might vary a little bit, but there's always some compression. That's pretty much the what I have now is just my bare bones setup. Like that's usually my go-to vocal chain, and I'll just either expand on that or maybe just add a couple variants to that depending on the session. But one thing I wanted for you to notice is on that vocal bus we have this utility plugin, and I've done another whole video on this and how you can actually cut your mixing time in half by using the utility plugin on all your audio channels. So if you haven't done that, just go ahead and click over here, I guess, yes, right here, and I've got this link that'll send you to that video so you can learn how you can cut your mixing time in half, especially with automation. I use the utility plugin for that, and it's really helpful. All right, so let me just move on to the vocal bus for the background vocals. Now, the same, but obviously a little bit different EQing wise, and so same thing, some compression, some EQ, and things like that. But let me talk about the arrangement and how the vocals are edited and lined up. So a couple things you notice here. We've got one solo vocal here with the lead.
Up in the sky with the aeroplane.
Now, in order to kind of fill that space up, we've got some effects like reverbs, delays, and things like that. And that's happening here with the lead vocal bus. So I'm sending, now here we go, sending audio to a return track so we can deal with some effects processing like delays and reverbs to add dimension. So let's solo the vocal.
Up in the sky.
Now C, let's start with that one. Return track C, A, B, C, is our vocal reverb, and I'm using a Universal Audio plugin. This is a plate reverb, and I just really love the richness of this reverb. It's really great sounding reverb, very nice sounding plate. And so without getting too crazy detailed, one thing I like to do to create some distance between the actual vocal performance and the reverb is pre-delay. So grab a reverb, and actually just when it comes to dealing with vocals, pre-delay is essential, because that's going to determine how far back or just how ahead of the vocals sit with that reverb. So I've got the pre-delay pretty late here, and let me just play you the difference between having the pre-delay at 0.
Up in the sky with the aeroplane.
So you can see how the reverb is immediate. As soon as the vocal is performed, you can hear the reverb. Now let's just crank the pre-delay a little bit.
Up in the sky.
And you can hear how the vocal and the reverb are, now the reverb is just happening a little bit later. Let me go back to the setting I had it at.
Up in the sky with the aeroplanes.
So that's cool. Now it's giving some good distance between the reverb happening and the real vocal. And you notice the filter I have there, I have that filter to just kind of trim off any high end that I don't want to be evident in the reverb. I want the reverb to be warm and dark. So that's why we have that. And next we have, so we've got, let's say, some delay. And that's going through the channel D. And I'm just going to solo that here. So the delay I'm using is it's stock plugin. It's a ping pong delay here with Ableton Live. And I've done a trick here that I've shown in another video, and that's adding a compressor to my ping pong delay and allowing that lead vocal track to trigger the compressor. So it actually starts to get out of the way every time the lead vocal performs. So again, if you want more information on how to do that and how that works, just click this link over here and I'll be sure to, that sends you to the video that goes more in depth about that. All right, and then what we got is on E is a doubler. Now I love using this doubler. It's by Waves, and it's creating a slightly coarse, slight delay on the doubler, but it's definitely widening up the vocal. And this is great to have with a lot of the lead vocals because since she's bare out there, it's just the snaps, the arpeggiated in her. Having a doubler on there will definitely give some more depth to it, and it just makes her feel like she's just not completely all alone there, and will give some more stereo depth. So it feels like there is another take being done. And she recorded it twice there. So I definitely have a lot of the doubler being ran through the vocal. All right, let's talk quickly about the layering and stacks here. So in order to actually start creating some depth with the vocals, we go from the one vocal to now jumping into the pre, which has the lead vocal and some background vocals to just support that vocal take. So I'll solo the lead. I just keep on coming back. Best mistake I've made. So the lead alone, it's good, but then when you start adding the backgrounds, adds the width and depth that we want with the vocals. I just keep on coming back. Best mistake I've made. So you can see here, background vocals 1, 2, 3, 4. So normally when I'm tracking, and these vocals were tracked directly into Ableton Live. I didn't track them into Pro Tools or any other program and then imported them here. I've been kind of forcing myself to do all the tracking and all the vocal recording and the comping completely in Ableton Live. Why? Well, because I just want to. It became easier for me since I was working out of Live anyways. It was just easier for me to get them in there. Now here's the trick and the secret to getting good vocals in Ableton Live. Just recording your vocals well, and that takes with having a great vocal performance. Okay, so having good vocals starts with having a great vocal performance. I can't stress that enough. You cannot try to fix everything once it's already been recorded. That means having great recording volumes and recording levels, not recording too hot, not recording too low, and also, doing your best to guide the vocalist to getting the right take. Now, I'll deal with some pitch issues every now and then. That's not the problem. But as a producer, I'm very centered around having a great performance. Performance is always going to trump intonation. And what that means is, yeah, you can be slightly tuned off a little bit here. I might not even fix that because I like some of those nuances. But there's no way that I can add attitude to a vocal. There's no attitude plugin. There's no plugin that allows you to say, okay, make this person come alive. You, and for all the producers out there who are working with others, it's your role and your job to make sure that you're extracting the best performance possible out of the person that you're working with, the person that you're collaborating with. If you're recording for another artist, take the time to get the right performance, because without that right performance, there's no amount of editing, nothing that you could really do that'll bring that character through. You gotta capture it in the performance. So if it takes you to just do a whole session where you're just working on the takes over and over, and then maybe giving them the track and having them take it home and just practice it, and here's a great tip. Try to do your best. If you've just written a song there, memorize the words, memorize the lyrics, get them down by memory, because when you're performing it by memory, that's always a better performance than just literally reading it by paper and while recording. It's just something that happens when you've committed yourself to those words, and you're selling you're selling the picture through the way you're performing. So that is a must. That's a big thing here. And then when you get that down, you can move into recording multiple takes. So what I do is I'll have her record a a lead take, which is this one here.
I just keep on coming.
And then what we do is we go ahead and record that same take. Now, I do not copy and paste that. I did not just select this and drag it down here. What we have her sing the same exact take as best as possible, matching the same timing, the same rhythm, same thing over here. So here's the... So we'll just go ahead and record those over and over. And what I do is I pan that to the left, and I pan this one to the right, and then maybe do another 2 takes, pan this one hard to the left, pan this one hard to the right, and what that gives you is a nice overall vocal performance sounding like this.
I just keep on coming back, that's what sake of me.
And the same thing goes with the choruses. So the chorus, we have this one lead here, and we've got a lot of the vocal chops happening here, and I'm going to walk you through that in a second. But then we've got this call and response section here where I have her doubling all these sections here. So here's the chorus doubles.
Give it away. There won't be nothing left if I give.
So for the chorus, we just have the lead taking precedence over here, and then I have her doing this one section with the chorus so that it just opens up, becomes bigger for that section. It's like, you know, the gang comes in to sing that section, and so instead of having the whole chorus layered with the 4 vocals, it gives it this nice like small and then big, and it's just overall dynamic. So I really like doing that with the vocals. Now here's the actual vocal performance without the edit. So I have,
But give it away.
so if you just stretch this out, this is the actual vocal.
Give it away.
Now originally that's what I had, and it was okay, but when I started to do these chops and I just select this section and hit, you know, duplicate, I love the rhythm that it had, and that's what I had in my head. I envisioned it, because when I sang the demo melody, when we were working and putting ideas down, I was, you know, saying, you know, when I give it away, and I was doing all those chops myself. So in my head, I had that visioned before we even got there. So I definitely wanted to accomplish that, and I did that by just cutting that section and duplicating it, and that's where we get this little.
Give it away. There won't be nothing left if I give it away.
And so this section here, what I did was I went to some of these vocals and I just captured one of the parts that here, let's strip this back and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So here, so I just grabbed one of these sections here, cut that, and created the rhythm that we have now here.
I might just disappear.
All right, and then that next part is our vocal chop. And this is what we're gonna go ahead and end this this episode with, the vocal chopping. So the vocal chopping is actually a really big part of this, because we have that second part of the chorus, and this takes lead. So here's the vocal chop. And we have her coming in with that lead there. So let me just walk you through the vocal chop really quick. So here's the vocal chop. Now what I've done was I simply just took vocals that I had from the verse and just dragged them into a simpler. And you could take any ad lib or any section of any vocal performance that you might have, or this might even come from an acapella that you might have in your hard drive, or any vocal. And what's great about using vocals as an instrument is the vocal is probably the most versatile instrument on earth. And I love how a vocal, nothing really sounds close to, you know, I could have probably picked a synth or a patch and try to do that, but man, the texture of the vocal and her vocal here just does something different than any synth would. So it's always fun to kind of just have some happy accidents while tweaking the vocals and putting them in the simpler. So I just dragged it into the simpler and found, let's trigger the simpler here, record, enable that. And just triggering it with my MIDI controller, I just found one section that I liked, picked one specific note, and just treat it as an actual patch now. So we've got... Now, what I like to do is add some glide. So what that does is you head over here to the control section, and I just did a little bit detuning to match, you know, just to match the intonation. And we set the glide here from off to portamento. And the portamento is what gives that one note gliding to the next. So if I hold down a note, and I just, while holding that one note down, press another key, it gives that nice glide. And so I wanted that to be, you know, an element in there. So just make sure to use your portamento, and what you do is just go and increase time or decrease it, and just find that sweet spot, because with every vocal that you put in here, it'll be different, especially using short little vocal samples. So let me just go into the MIDI here, double click that. Now this over here, the bend that you hear on this note is being done by a pitch bend. So here's the pitch bend, and I just simply just went to my controller and just literally just did a pitch bend on the fly when recording it. And that glide back up is what you hear, and that's what the portamento is doing. Alright, so that now became a lead part at the second part of the chorus. And how I got there was, you know, we didn't have that at first. It pretty much just sounded like this. It was after. So I actually started here first. I started with the vocal chop. This was my main inspiration for the chorus. I came up with this vocal chop line first, and then I kind of worked backwards. Then we came up with the line and the melody for the chorus. But I actually locked in that vocal chop first, put that down. I was like, wow, this is a great groove. I love this vibe. And then we just kind of wrote lyrics and wrote that melody line on top of that, and that became the first half of the chorus. And so that's what was going on there. And then we go into the bridge section here. Let me play the bridge for you. Now, I have myself recorded here. I just did a couple little ahs and oohs to add some background texture. And for this, I grouped it. And the reason why I did that is because I'm treating my vocal section as more of an instrument and more of a layer rather than a lead predominant vocal thing. So I wasn't going to be doing a lot of mixing or, you know, balancing out my vocals. I was just putting them there. I just stacked it. I recorded about 4 vocal takes, put it all together, and then just added a reverb as an insert. So here's the actual vocal part. And I'm treating this, once again, as just layer to have in the background. Ah, sounds nice. It's like me chilling out in a spa or something. No, I don't know, whatever. But there you go, I have that. And so what I like to do is just kind of keep that in the background during the bridge, just to give some nice dimension.
Like I had wings and now I'm crawling.
And what I did here in the bridge is I literally copied certain parts of that lead vocal, like this section here, dragged it down, and actually pitched it up to the 7th or the 5th. So this is a cool technique for you to apply too. Because I'm actually pitching it up, it's not an exact copy, and so this is basically just hand writing some harmonies. So,
Wings and now I'm crawling.
and I'll do the same thing over here.
Standing on the ledge, I'm falling down. Your heaven and your hell in one. Still
And there's the effect.
I keep running back. If I give it away, there won't be nothing left.
So thank you so much for watching this episode in the series. Now there's just one more left, and as soon as I'm done wrapping up a couple projects that I'm currently working on, I'll be sure to film that and have that uploaded so you guys can dive into that. I want to spend some time talking about what happens after the song's done. Where do you go? How do you get it out? And maybe shed some light into how I go about developing the artist. You know, developing and building the brand of GG Row, and what's been going on through the whole involvement of this project. So definitely keep an eye out for that next video. So be sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe so you can keep up to date. and download that free vocal chain that I talked about in this video by clicking the link in the description box below. Looking forward to seeing you again in the next video. Take care.